And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I am your host, Wes Tankersley. Can you do me a big favor? If you are watching this on the live show, please like, share, and review it. Actually, do a watch party. If you're listening to this on the podcast, please like, share, and review it. This is episode number 81, and our guest is Dagmara Wozniak. Dagmara is an Olympic Saber Fencer for the U.S. Olympic team, born in Poland, immigrated to the U.S. at a young age. Welcome to the show, Dagmara.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to get to have you on here. I don't get a whole lot of females on here because they just don't tend to reach out to me, or I need to find them. And so, you know, it's just kind of one of those deals. So I'm really excited to have you on here, especially a female athlete, because I think that it's a really great thing that you're doing, especially fencing, because I have no clue about it. And I'll have you talk about that a little bit more. But can you give us kind of a little background on yourself, kind of where you came from and where you grew up and how you got into fencing?
Yeah, so I was born in Poland, and I immigrated to the United States when I was 1. I still consider myself Polish American. But yeah, I came to the United States when I was 1. My parents decided to stay in New Jersey, and, you know, life kind of started from there. And then when I was around, 9, 10 years old, I had been involved with karate. So I really liked the combat aspect. I tried gymnastics before that. You know, my parents saw that I was like an active child, so they're like, okay, we need to put her into sports. So I tried like dancing, gymnastics, and then karate was like the thing that I kind of stuck to the most. And then the club actually shut down and moved away. So my dad said, hey, like, there's a local fencing club in the town over. Why don't we give it a try? And, I walked in. I had no idea what fencing was, but I knew that I liked, Zorro and the Three Musketeers, all those movies. I was a huge fan, swashbuckling, all those like pirate movies. But yeah, I had no idea what fencing exactly was. And then I walk into, a fencing class, and I'm like, I was instantly hooked, and one thing I liked was fighting other kids. So, being able to hit other kids with a metal stick and not get in trouble, I'm like, yes, this is golden for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I stuck with it ever since. I really fell in love with, the kids that I met in the class. I fell in love with how different it is, how challenging it was, how much it forced me to like think, and how much it was like a mental game, but a physical game. And yeah, and I've stuck with it ever since.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, looking, like I told you, like I know just enough to get in trouble with fencing. I know that there's like 3 different types, and I also know that it's kind of new to America because America's only been around for a little bit of time. What did your parents know what fencing was? Was that something that Poland had, that they just were like, hey, let's get into this? Or how did they just kind of say, hey, let's try this out?
Yeah, my dad knew what fencing was. It definitely has a longer history in Europe. That's where it originated. But so he had a very good idea what fencing was. He knows fencing history probably even better than I do. But yeah, we had like a local like community center that was like a Polish recreational community center. And so he's like, okay, I really want to make sure that she's tied to her roots. And it was a great place for me to interact with other kids, practice the language, even though we were like, we're not going to speak Polish. But the head coach was Polish, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of like practice the language so I don't forget it, as well as just being active and staying, active as a young kid.
Yeah, and this is a question that I was thinking about too. Is like it's great that that's where you found that. Did you find though that like being an immigrant kind of came with something a little different? Was it harder to get ahead and do things because of being an immigrant, or was it pretty simple that everyone you kind of fit in pretty well and it was no big deal?
I have to say, like, I didn't. It might have been difficult. It might have been not. My parents just told me every single day, go to school, go to fencing, work hard, put your head down, and just keep grinding. So I think that work ethic is something that my parents really instilled in me, and that's something that they learned from, growing up in communism and then kind of escaping Poland because it was not a really great, living situation. And so the American dream was something that my dad's like, this is what I want for my family. I want so he did his best to bring us over. So he actually, they said, okay, you can go to America, but you have to leave your family behind. So we weren't even allowed to go with him in the beginning. They were kind of using us as collateral to make sure that he comes back. And then, when he had an opportunity to kind of get us out, he did. And I think as a young kid, I had a feeling that we were a little different, I didn't go to the mall and hang out. There were a lot of things that we just really did differently. But for me, I just got so focused on my passion, and that was fencing. Even though my parents really wanted it to be school, I got so hooked onto fencing and obsessed with it. And it was I don't care about friends. I don't care about parties. I want to be great at this, and I want to just keep grinding with this.
So tell us a little bit about the different types of fencing, because you're a saber fencer, right? So there's two other ones.
Yes.
What's the difference between the three of them?
So the easiest way that I can explain fencing is, yes, there's three different weapons. And mainly when you get to a really high level, you specialize in one. So it's like marathon running, hurdling, and sprinting. They're three different track and field, but they're all under the umbrella of track and field. So it's the same thing. There's three mini sports within fencing. I do saber, and the three weapons differ by target area. The blade and epee and foil are a little bit closer than saber, I would have to say. In terms of relativeness, it's saber is closer to epee, and then it's to foil, and then epee. So saber and epee is kind of the furthest away from each other, and foil is in the middle. So I fence saber, and my target area is only from my waist and up. So my legs don't count, my foot doesn't count, and it is a matter of slashing. So just like you would see a horseman, a cavalry, they're slicing people left and right. So that's what I do. And then you have epee, which is the whole body is the target area. So you can hit someone from their head all the way down to their toe. Then you have foil, which is just the torso. So the epee is the largest weapon. It has a really huge bell guard. Then you have saber, which has exactly how you would see a cavalry horseman have. And then foil, it has a smaller one, the one that you always see in the Richie Rich movie,
right.
Or any other kind of James Bond. That's a foil. And what else is different? Oh, and so foil and epee, you have to exert a certain amount of force to compress the tip in order to register that you've hit your opponent. It's saber, it only takes the slightest contact, but there has to be contact. So when me and you hit each other, we're connected with electric wiring to our saber, and then when I touch your lame, it completes the circuit, and then it can register on the machine that I have hit you, or that you have hit me.
That's crazy, because you probably back in the day when this whole thing started, someone had to watch that happen, and now they've made it so that they don't have to. They can just get tagged by the electricity. That's crazy.
Exactly. So they actually started off the reason why the whole fencing jacket, or the underneath the electric, why it's all white, because they used to dip the tip in ink, and then the referees would see when it you would make a mark on someone's jacket. So before it was modernized to, with all the electric stuff, which now it's even wireless, so it's been another whole step, game up. There used to be a lot of judges, and they would watch it when someone would make a mark.
That's crazy. That's a great way to not have to have that. It's kind of like baseball where someone's throwing a pitch and they got the robots calling the pitches. Now you're doing that kind of the same way, but it's an actual connection, so it has to happen. So
exactly.
One of the things that I was talking about with one of my friends earlier was the fact that it's an individual sport, but it's also a team sport. It's kind of like wrestling in a sense, correct? So,
yeah, I would say so.
So your score counts towards the team score, but if you lose, then it counts towards nothing, or you get a certain point of that. How is scoring done in that between team and individual?
individual is the first to 15. So let's say me and you are fencing. The first person that reaches 15 points is going to be labeled the winner, and you advance. If you want me to also explain how a competition kind of looks, it does start off like wrestling, where it's like a round robin pool situation, and then based off of those results, how you do in the pool, you get ranked. So like, let's say 1 to 64. And then after that, it kind of goes like a basketball bracket. So you win, you continue, you lose, you're out.
Right.
A direct elimination. That's exactly what it's called. But with a team event, I would say it's almost more like it's a relay. So let's say we start off, it's the first person to 5. So you win 5-0, the next 2 men come on. Your team only needs 5 points to get to 10. My team needs to get 10.
Okay.
So, and then it goes by increments of 5. So the first team to reach 45 is going to be the winner. So at the end, it could be your team has 40, you only need to score 5. My team has 30, we need to score 20 points or 15. So it can happen.
They could work their way back from being in the
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So you've been on a couple Olympic teams. Is it an actual team competition in the Olympics, or is it just individual? How does that work? Same kind of thing?
Yeah, so I wish, if Tokyo happens,
yeah.
which we're all, fingers crossed that it does, Tokyo will be the first Olympics where we have all of our individual events as well as all of our team events. When the IOC allowed Women's Saber, my event, to debut in the 2004 Olympics in Athens, they said, okay, like we'll let women's saber fencing allowed into the Olympics, but now we have a rotation of 2 team events. So 2 team events every Olympics had to be rotated out. So in 2004, there was no team event for women's saber. 2008, there was a team event. They won the bronze medal. And then 2012, we were rotated out again, even though I don't think it was actually our turn to get rotated out. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, 2016, we had the team event. And then now 2020 is when everybody has the opportunity. No one has to get rotated out. And I think it's an amazing opportunity for everyone, because I think everyone deserves a shot at individual and team, especially because majority of our season, we're always doing, the whole team event circuit as well as world championships, having every weapon has team event. So for now to go to the highest level competition and not have that opportunity, it's kind of like,
Yeah. Well, what are the thoughts on the Olympics? Are they planning on doing that this year instead of 2020, or what? Do you have any idea what's going to happen with that now?
Well, since we've been delayed a whole year, pretty much, they're telling us that this summer is when the Olympics are going to take place. No matter what, they're like, we don't want to be the country that can't, kind of bring the world together and do this amazing, competition for everyone to kind of just focus on sports. So they're telling us to continue preparation as if it's going to happen. But, at this point, if they're canceled, they're canceled. If they're not, I want to be prepared as I can be, even though we're constantly, there's lockdown, no lockdown, threat of a lockdown. So it's really hard to kind of just focus on fencing. And my coach has been really good about just, again, put your head down, do the work. And when it comes to it, if it's canceled, it's not in my control. But I did everything I could to prepare. Obviously, it's an opportunity lost to compete against the best in the world and, kind of claim that title of being an Olympic champion. But there's other bigger things, that are happening. And again, it's not in my control. So they've just been telling us to continue training, to continue focusing as if it's going to happen. It's just a matter, I think, if anything, of if there's going to be spectators or not. So I think it's leaning more towards there won't be any spectators allowed at the competitions. But anything can change, as we've seen this whole year.
How does that work for you? Because I know, I'm a big baseball fan, and having no people in the stands would be, for me, as if I was a baseball player and I was thriving on that, to have people in the stands. Would it be harder for you to compete with not having any spectators? Or how do you feel about that?
It's in Rio when we were competing and fencing for the bronze medal, it was an amazing moment to be able to do that in front of family and friends, and even people that I didn't know that were cheering for USA. Like, it was a great experience. But if it's like you get to compete and there's no one there, or you don't get to compete at all, like, I'll take what I can get. Like, I love competition. I love being able to go out there and just put my skills, to the test. So if I have to kind of hear only my teammates cheering for me, then, like, that's fine. As long as I can go out there, it's still going to go into the books as an Olympic medal if I do well. So that's good enough for me.
Yeah, you can still win if no one's watching, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So talk to me kind of about, so you've been injured, right? You had a surgery, and I had listened to another interview where you had an osteotomy, and I've had one of those, but not on my femur. So it's kind of a tough, when you have the type that I had, it was like I couldn't walk for 6 months. Like, I had to be on crutches, and I'm assuming you probably had a closing one. Is that how it worked, where they cut it and then they put it back together, or did they put something in between there and you couldn't walk on it?
No, so they actually sliced a slice of my heel bone out, and then they moved it forward and then put like a big screw in to keep it together, to relieve pressure off of the Achilles. And, he said the first 2 weeks, 100%, no weight bearing, can't be on it. Don't even try. And then I think my first follow-up was just a week after surgery. And I think because of our time frame, I didn't have a lot of time. This surgery was done at the end of July, if I remember correctly, or yeah, I think it was the end of July. The qualification process was starting before the new year, so I really needed to kind of heal as fast as I could. So after a week, he's like, okay, I know it's gonna hurt, but I need you to start putting weight on this thing, especially because of the empty space that was around the screw. The more impact I was going to have, the faster I could wake up the osteoblasts in order to create bone. So it was a really grueling process. So he was kind of really pushing me hard in terms of physical therapy, as well as just, getting it to work. So for me to walk even to the gym, which is like an 8-minute walk, I mean, I thought I was climbing Mount Everest. It was just like, how could something like this hurt so much? But I kept thinking, like, I know what I'm fighting for. I know I want to qualify for the team. I'm not going to go out like this.
Yeah, and it's amazing how the pain is actually good because it's causing that bone to grow even more. The type that I had in my femur, where they actually cut it and then they opened it up and they stuck cadaver bone in there, which that's why you couldn't bear weight. Wow. Where with yours, the nice thing is that you could almost, it's kind of like a knee replacement. You can go right back to it for the most part as soon as you're ready to start walking on it. So I know that probably plays into what's going on with the next Olympics as well. How is that injury healing? Are you pretty much back to full strength? Do you still have some work to do on it, or what's going on there?
Well, I actually had to jump back into competition, not even fully healed. And then I debuted my first competition in Montreal, which is, I want to say it was around December. And I bombed it. I bombed it so bad. And I'm like, wow, is this how it's going to end for me? Like, this is not what I was hoping for. And I had 2 months to prepare to the next World Cup, which was in Athens, Greece. And I just changed some things around, had a new confidence coach, which is someone I've never worked with before. She's amazing, Kristen. And I started working with her and kind of really just focusing on the next competition, not the bigger picture, not anything else, really mentally preparing, I would say, more than physically. And then, I go to Greece and I bang out a top 8 and really catapult myself back into the running for the team. So it was, being like 9th, I think, in the country to bringing myself back up to top 3. So it was an amazing showing, and I wasn't even healed. I was crying hysterically every match. And there was even one point where, people were calculating and figuring, points out, and they're like, you did it. Like, if you want to step back, like, you can. And I'm like, no, it needs to be solid. It needs to be 100%. I'm not taking any chances. And I was in so much pain, but I was like, no, let me just keep going. Because for me, I've dealt with so many injuries, and fighting through the pain is just something I'm used to. So I was like, this is mental training to just kind of like, don't think about the pain or use the pain. Like, go through it. How are you going to figure this out? And then amazing competition. And then we come home and COVID, borders closed, next competition canceled. So it was like, this is horrible what's going on in the country, what's going on over the world. But the blessing in disguise for me was I had an opportunity. The more this kind of dragged out, I could officially and 100% heal. So in terms of the heal, I think I'm 100% healed, but now we're just kind of working out different kinks that, unfortunately, with compensation and, changing the way I was moving, kind of working that out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you obviously changed your anatomy of your ankle. I mean, that's kind of one of the tough things that you have to learn how to reuse that a different way. So,
yeah.
What is the lifespan of a fencer? How long do you continue to keep doing what you're doing? I mean, is it something that is it a lifetime sport, something you can do forever? Obviously, you can't probably be, 100% competitive like baseball span. They're usually like, once they hit 30, they think they're on the downhill run. How do they look at that in fencing?
I would say it varies. Like, if you were to ask me, several years ago, like women's saber was the newest that was, in the Olympic, stage. So around there, I would feel like it was like 21 was like the prime time. But now you see a lot of the female athletes staying in it longer. It feels more professional. There's more sponsorship opportunities. And because of that, I feel like now it's like 28, 30, like the age really kind of starts growing once we had more women coming in, more countries getting involved. Our competition pool used to be like 100. I think we would barely break 100 when I was much younger, but now we're getting closer to 200 competitors at a competition. So the sport is growing. The publicity and all that stuff is growing around the sport. More people are getting involved. So I feel like people are staying in it longer, especially the Americans. And if you look at the men's, I mean, you have some guys that are 38, in their 40s, like competing. It's also a little bit easier to be a baby daddy and continue competing, but for,
Right.
We have a couple amazing female athletes that have been able to have kids and come back right into the sport. I feel like you didn't really see that going on before. It was either once you decide to have, a family and kids and all that, you step away from the sport. But, these amazing, female role models, as well as my teammate Mario Zagunis, had a kid and her amazing journey, like coming back and regaining like such a high spot in the world, two-time Olympic champion. Like it's great to see, and it gives me hope.
That's good. That's never something that like I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's not really something that you think about. Honestly, you almost lose a year of competing because you have a child, and that's just crazy. That's a big edge that you would lose, and so it's great that that women are fighting back for that and continuing to do that. What are you thinking and I know that this is just kind of the future, and I'm one of those people who always look at like where I'm going to see myself 5 years from now. Do you have a plan for after you're done? Are you going to coach? Are you going to do traveling? What are you going to do when you do call it a day?
The golden question. My parents want to know. My coach wants to know. Everybody wants to know. I'll be honest. I feel like I'm being pulled into so many different directions. I've been told like I'm really good at motivational speaking. I'm really good at coaching. I'm really good at connecting with younger female athletes. I'm also like really into DIY home stuff. So that's like completely left field. So I think that there's like a lot of opportunities for me. I just don't know what I'm 100% passionate about. I have been more involved with speaking to younger female athletes at my fencing club. And it's something that I feel like, I might not have necessarily had that outlet or that resource when I was growing up. So being able to kind of talk to younger female athletes about mental health and body positivity and just, there's going to be a lot of people that say you got to look like this, you got to act like this, you got to fence like this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and it really loses their footing of like following their own voice. So being able to kind of say like, don't lose that fire, don't lose that light, has been very fulfilling for me, and I feel like that's definitely a direction I see myself going in. Be it, called a confidence coach, very inspired by my own confidence coach, Kristen. So yeah, that's in the works, but we'll see. I mean, I don't even know if I'm done yet competing. I had that conversation with my boyfriend. I was like, would you be upset if I competed for another 4 years? But we don't even know what it's going to look like. Is it going to be extended another 4 years from 2021, or is it just 3 years to prepare? So there's a lot of questions, I think, that will affect my decision, and we'll see from there.
Well, and you do have you have a degree as well, right? So you can always fall back on that if you needed to. But I don't see that happening. I feel like you're such a good speaker anyway. Like, I listened to a couple interviews that you had this morning. I was just like, man, she knows what she's doing. She's good to go.
I majored in biology. I don't know what I'm going to do with that.
Well, I majored in education, and I am not a teacher. So I was for 4 years, and it was the dumbest thing I ever did. So I have 2 degrees in education, and obviously it helped me, but I'm not doing it, right? It wasn't for me. So it doesn't mean that just because you have that degree, you have to do that. And I think you know that. I'm sure of that. So
the thing about fencing, I feel like, sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
It's always been kind of like, you finish college and you have to get a job. You have to, this is the next step. So fencing was always like kind of second tier. And I feel like there's been a really big shift in the athletes that I grew up with, who are now the senior national team, the Olympic team, that are going the distance with being an Olympic fencing athlete. And it's not like I have to be a doctor, I have to be a lawyer, I have to be, something other than this fencer. If our career changes post fencing, then that's a completely, different story. But I think that there is an opportunity to be an athlete, and I would love to, milk that for as long as I can, because I love the sport. I love competing. I love challenging myself. I've had different, stages in my career of what I had to fight through. If it was a physical injury, if it was depression, if it was, gaining weight and like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? I feel terrible about myself. I don't fit into my stuff. There's always been some kind of hurdle to overcome. And it's been terrible, but it's also been so amazing to see how I come out on the other side and be like, wow, I'm so much stronger for this. I had my bio degree in the hopes of like, I have to be a doctor. I'm going to go to be a doctor in order to make money and do this. But I honestly, if I would have followed that path, I would not have made the Rio team. I would have not had a bronze medal. And I think my life would have been completely different.
Well, I think you have it pretty much figured out. You said it a little bit earlier, how you're focusing on the next thing in front of you instead of focusing on like 10 different things. You have that one thing going right now instead of thinking, hey, I've got these 10 competitions to get there. Let's just take care of this competition now. And that's kind of what it's about, right? I mean, that's really the way that you're looking at it now.
Yeah, I mean, you can orient your thoughts about like, okay, what are my goals? What is the big picture? But we got to break it down. Once you start thinking about everything, it's like, I always try to explain to younger kids, it's like being in a dodgeball game and trying to focus on like 10 balls coming at you. Like you're eventually you're just gonna get paralyzed and just crush under the pressure of trying to see everything. So focus on one thing, especially something that's in your control. So I can't control if competitions are happening or not. I can't control whether we go through lockdown again or not, quarantine, all that stuff. But I can control coming into the city, being safe, practicing, making every practice effective, and then going home and, doing the things that I got to do to make myself better than the day before.
Yeah, and really, I mean, that's all you can do. And that's great that you've found that. I had one more question. You talked about like female and body positivity and things like that. And I have a 7-year-old daughter who's coming up, and it's funny, like I look at it, like I've been overweight my whole life, and obviously it's different for a girl than it is for a boy. What would you tell young kids about the body positivity portion of that? What do you think is one of the things that, you would say to yourself when you were younger now that you talk about now?
I would say, oh, that's a good question. It's definitely, it's hard when you're growing up to not, you don't have 100% sense of self. You don't know every in and out about yourself. So when you start hearing from everyone else, you should do this, you should do that, like, for the longest time, I was told the only way that I could be successful is if I was skinny, if I was stick skinny. And I'm like, this is not something that I can achieve. This is not my body type. And, once I kind of silenced that, I was able to just kind of, again, focus on what's in front of me. It's the noise you hear from everybody else that starts making you shift directions in your life that could be a 5-second, decision that can change the rest of your life. And, that's one thing that I always try to tell the younger girls, like even in my club or whenever, I get these DMs about like, how do you do it? It's not easy, but it's something that you need to just bring yourself back to your truth, like what is the truth about yourself? Like, I'm working hard. The fact how I look has nothing to do with my success or how successful I'm going to be. Your effort and your work ethic is what's going to get you there, regardless of what you do. If it's fencing, if it's sports, if it's not sports related, if it's business, it's going to be your work ethic and the energy that you put in, not how you look on the outside.
Yeah, and that's a great message, because I think that that's the hardest part. I think that, as far as like me and everything, like even being in the man standpoint of that, they don't know, like doctors will tell you you're overweight. People will tell you you're overweight, but they have no clue really how healthy you actually are. And just because your genetics are a little bit different, you look a little bit different, it makes a big difference in that. And to tell someone, social media is kind of the killer on that deal, because everyone's posting these pictures of themselves and they're using these filters and they're doing all these things to make themselves look better.
Yeah. In
reality, that's like the 1% of the whole situation, when there's, 99% of America does not look that way, does not, they don't have that same image. And it makes it feel like it's a negative situation. So,
yeah, social media is a whole nother monster. I mean, there's positive things about it, but when you start comparing yourself, my confidence coach said it in an amazing way. Like, you put an outfit together, you feel great, you're going to the party and you're like, yeah, I'm going to have a great time. You feel so good about yourself, and all of a sudden you walk in and you see another girl, or you see, whoever starts to make you feel bad about yourself. So the fact that they look good, you feel like them looking good is taking something away from you. And that's that whole death by comparison. Once we start comparing ourselves, that's when, it's a downward spiral. So, I, even with social media, when I started looking at, people that I follow, I'm like, dang, I really don't feel good about myself when I'm following this person, regardless if they're, really authentic or not. But most of the time it was inauthentic people. So getting them out of, my view, my sight, I think was a really good positive step forward to kind of protecting my own, mental health. Like, am I 100% confident? No, but I'm working on it every day. And I think that there's triumph times, but then there's also going to be times that I fall short. And in order to get yourself out of that funk, you just got to bring yourself back to your truth and be like, maybe I don't look like that, but I am successful at other things. And I might not be happy with my weight right now, but I'm doing things that are going to take me one step closer to that. If you want to lose weight for yourself, or if you want to change your body for yourself, for, things that you want, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But once you start thinking, I need to lose weight because that's what gets attention, or in order to be successful, I need to look like that, that's when, it's the negative side of all of this.
Well, and I think one of the things you talked about too was about being a competitor. And one of the things that I found, and it took me a long time, because I just turned 40 this year, and it took me 38 years to realize that I can be competitive with myself. I don't need to be comparing myself to other people to be competitive. So that's a great way of putting it. Compete with yourself. I mean, and once you do that, which it's easier said than done, I mean, because it's still in the back of your mind, but it's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, it's been awesome having you on here. Do you have any, before we get to the last question, which I'm sure Anthony kind of told you about, but we're going to talk a little bit about where we can find you. What's the best way to get in contact with you? Are you pretty easy to get a hold of? Do you respond to people in any social media or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm really active in Instagram. I'm answering all the DMs when people have questions. I've been I took a little hiatus for the holiday season and just kind of get my frame of mind back into like a positive place. So I'm constantly trying to share stories and the fencing life and any kind of message that I have to kind of put out there. So like Instagram is probably the best way to get in touch if you have any questions about anything.
And what's your handle on Instagram?
It's just my name, Dagmara Wozniak.
Okay. And you have a website too, right? All that stuff can be found on there.
I do. I have www.dagmarawozniak.com.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I just want to help you. It is
all good.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have one more question, but before we get that, we need to talk about our last question sponsor. Our last question sponsor for this episode is PodSpout. It's the only tool you will need to promote your podcast. Head on over to podspout.com and get your free account today. If you would like to get a paid plan, use code SUCCESS to get a 10% discount. And you can also check mine out. If you're not sure what that is, go over to my Instagram account at wes.tankersley. Click the link in my bio, and you'll see an awesome landing page for your podcast. All right, Dagmara, it's been awesome having you on here. Like I said, there's one last question that we ask every single guest, and it's the same question. Success is defined by every individual in a different way, and it's something different for you than it is for me, as it is for anyone else. It could be money, fast cars, having a mansion, having family. You might be happy just flipping burgers at McDonald's. But what is your definition of success? How do you shape your success?
My definition of success, I think it's meeting a challenge and being able to overcome it. If it's, sometimes it could be a challenge of just getting out of bed, when you don't know your purpose, you don't know if you're going to get through the day, and being able to kind of say, okay, I have things that I need to do. I get up and I get going. A difficult competition, getting through that whole mental aspect of overcoming fears. To me, that's success. I don't necessarily look at cars and money and all that stuff to be the only definition of success, because we can get a little morbid here, but when you're on your deathbed, I feel like none of that matters. It matters how you treat people. It matters how you've been able to shape yourself as a person. To me, that's the most important thing. That's the definition of success. It's just showing up every day, and even it being hard, getting through that.
That's a great definition, because just like you said, no one's going to remember what car you drove when you died. No one's going to remember how much money you had. They're just going to remember who you were. So, well, it's been great having you on here, and I want to say thank you for taking the time to do this interview. It was really great talking to you, and I look forward to watching you in the Olympics.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Yep, thanks. All right, everyone. Well, that's the end of the show, and I wanted to say thank you for tuning in. Again, if you can please like, share, and review this on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching it on the live show, please do a watch party. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.